Hey YouTube, it's Casual Brews here with my Week 14 NFL picks and preview. Just got back from vacation last night. Was gone almost 2 full weeks. Obviously limited videos in that time. Again, no pick recap this week. I'll try to get back to doing a recap of this coming weekend's games now that I'm back home and back on schedule. Not a great week last week for me. I went only 12-16 overall. 6-8 against the spread, 6-8 in the totals. Kind of rushed my picks, honestly, and I think it kind of showed. I didn't really put a ton of time in thinking because I was, away and this and that, and just kind of had to find a tiny sliver of time in my trip to do my picks. So didn't do great. Hopefully get back on track. I had 2 really good weeks prior to that, so try to find the formula again here. Spent a good amount of time on these ones, really thought them through well. So, yeah, we'll see if I can bounce back here. Week 14, not a bad slate of NFL games. Couple standouts. There's a few bigger spreads, some mismatches, but overall, not a bad slate. We start with the Thursday night game. That's tonight. I'm recording this Thursday morning. Pittsburgh getting 3 points at Minnesota. I like Pittsburgh in this one. I really do. They're coming off a nice kind of down to the wire win against the Ravens. I don't think they're still one of the top teams in the AFC by any stretch, but they probably, after especially getting, that blowout loss they suffered, I think Tomlin really got those guys back and competing, and especially on defense. Because offensively, you're going to be limited to kind of what you can get from Big Ben, and at times, especially in the clutch, he can rise to the occasion and still be effective. So I think the Steelers on both sides of the ball are good enough to kind of be in that like good-ish tier, I think, in the AFC. Minnesota, another obviously tough loss to giving Detroit their first win of the season. I think their season's dead at this point. They've been kind of win-loss the whole way through, and that loss against the Lions was bad. That was probably, I think, the nail in their coffin for their season. Dalvin Cook's, I think, questionable for the game, and Adam Thielen's out. I just like Pittsburgh here. I'm surprised they're a 3-point underdog. I guess it's just the fact that the game's in Minnesota, but I don't think it's going to be exactly a raucous atmosphere there. So I like Pittsburgh, and I like the under 44.5. Just feel like Thursday night games generally a little lower scoring. I think Steelers defense had a good answer against the Ravens, played well, and I think that'll continue in this game. The Vikings possibly without Cook and obviously without Thielen is huge. I don't see them scoring a lot, so I like Pittsburgh and the under pretty convincingly actually in this one. One of my more confident picks so far this week. Next up, we got Ravens plus 2.5 at Cleveland. Just touched on the Ravens last game there. Kind of a tough loss for them against the Steelers. Had a chance to kick an extra point, tie, go to overtime, but really should have never really been in that position because they had a decent lead early and they kind of just lost their way really on both sides. Pittsburgh kind of stormed back. A couple nice drives by Big Ben to give them the lead. Ravens just too little too late to come back on their own end. I don't know. I like them to bounce back though here. I've said that a couple times and hasn't worked for me, so I feel like now it's kind of have to. The Ravens, I mean, they've looked really good at times this year, and then they've kind of had a couple head scratchers lately. So I think divisional game against the Browns team that's just kind of like Minnesota, maybe lost its way and just looks bleak for them at this point. Besides they had a nice win against the Bengals, but other than that, they've been kind of off for about a month or so. I like the Ravens with the points as well. Probably to win the game too. And then I like over 43. Browns offense has kind of struggled for the most part, so I don't love this pick. And then the Ravens also are kind of a little bit leaving a bit of food on their table offensively. But I think both teams kind of get it going a little bit, move the ball a bit. Maybe the run game pops a couple big runs and squeaks over. Don't love that pick as much as I love the previous one, but I'll take the Ravens and the over 43 here. Next up, Seahawks minus 8.5 at Houston. Kind of went back and forth in my head on this one. Obviously, I'm a Seahawks fan. Our season's effectively over. By some miracle, we could maybe win out, make the playoffs at 9-8 as the last wild card. I don't think that's likely. Either way, I don't think it's likely we finish 9-8, let alone make the playoffs at that number. Even though that 7th seed is kind of hovering around 500, all year really. So mathematically, it's possible. Not very likely. Also, Jamal Adams announced he's out for the year. A lot of people dunk on him and shit on him because all he can do is rush the passer or whatever. He's been playing pretty well the last few weeks, honestly, if you look. Obviously, still has his shortcomings in coverage and that, but he's a big part of their defense, at least, especially from a leadership standpoint. Going to replace him with a guy likely in Ryan Neal, he shows some flashes, but fundamentally he's still got some work to do, some stuff to learn. So that's a big loss. I just think Houston's that bad that I think Seahawks can cover the 8.5. Initially, I scratched off picking Houston plus 8.5 at first, just thinking that this would be a kind of game Seahawks come out, maybe not really a ton to play for, obviously, and just let Houston hang around. But Texans just stink. I mean, they've lost a game 31-0, 31-3, a bunch of other low-scoring, ugly games. They got a lot of guys injured, too. I looked at their injury report. A lot of guys probably out, both sides of the ball. They're just bad. I think, the mantle for the worst team in the NFL has kind of been passed around between like the same 4 teams, I feel like. Jets, Jaguars, Lions, Texans. Right now it's probably the Texans. At least, Jaguars, they're probably right down there too, obviously, but at least they have a win over the Bills. And the Jets kind of shown some fight. The Lions coming off a win. I think the Texans are now the worst team in the NFL until maybe next week. Who knows? So I think the Seahawks can just come out, do enough. Their defense is still playing pretty well. It's gotten better each year or each game, but obviously losing Jamal Adams hurts. But I think Houston's just that bad. I can see Seattle winning a pretty convincing game by the 8.5. So take the Seahawks minus 8.5 and under 41. Houston is just dreadful to watch offensively. So hopefully for the sake of my pick, the Seahawks don't kind of let up and take them lightly or whatever. And so Seahawks in the under. Next up, we got Dallas minus 4.5 at Washington. It's a good game. Division battle. Washington, 4 straight wins. Dallas kind of been hot and cold lately, coming off a win against maybe not a really good Saints team, but they still covered that game. What do you want to say? I mean, Washington, maybe their time's kind of run out a little bit here, getting a divisional battle. I mean, they look good, but they kind of barely squeaked by a not-so-good Raiders team last week. There was like a probably missed PI call on the Raiders' last drive, or else maybe they could have won that game. But I don't know. I really had a hard time with this pick. In one hand, I'm like 4.5. These two teams is a little too much. I wanted to just roll with the points. I just think Dallas worries me a little bit with Zeke being a bit hobbled and Pollard being even more so. But I think at least Zeke should be able to play. They got all the receivers healthy now. Dak's healthy, and I think Cowboys are just due for a real back to square one kind of game like they had earlier in the year. I just feel like this is an opportunity for Dallas to getting some defensive guys back too, on the defensive line. I just think this is a flex your muscles kind of game for the Cowboys. The 4.5 worries me a little bit. I wish it was like 2.5 maybe, because I think Dallas is going to win. The question is, will they let Washington hang around to cover? I'm going to lean on no, so I'll take Dallas minus 4.5 And I like the over 48. I just think Dallas's offense, when it's clicking, when it's right, this is as good as there is. All the receivers back. Washington's defense still a little bit shaky in the secondary. So I like Dallas to maybe put up 27, 30 points. And Washington maybe can kind of hang around and put up enough on their own to cover the over. Dallas's defense, while it has obviously some really good pieces, Parsons, Diggs, what's his name, Gallimore or whatever's coming back, I think, up front. They got some pieces, but they haven't looked as a unit that great lately. So I think Washington can do enough on their own to get, to match Dallas's point production and get the over 48. So give me Dallas and the over. Next, we got the Raiders plus 10 at Kansas City. Another divisional battle. Last couple years, this would have been like a little more highly anticipated, except the Raiders have kind of fallen off a cliff. Kansas City's kind of rounding back into form a little bit. They're still not quite there offensively, but their defense is playing really well. And there's been enough of a sample size that maybe they are now a defensive team. That's how it's looked the last few weeks. I watched, that Denver Kansas City game last Sunday night. Yeah, Chiefs defense looks pretty good. Granted, the Broncos offense stinks, but our quarterback stinks at least. But yeah, I don't know. Chiefs, another one I kind of hummed and hawed over a lot, but I think the Chiefs, I bet against them last week. They made me look silly. I think the Chiefs can cover 10 points. Against the Raiders, there's some little bit of bad blood there, I'm sure. Years prior, this has been a close game. The Raiders have upset the Chiefs in the past, but the Raiders just look off. They haven't been the same, unfortunately, since the Ruggs incident. Chiefs minus 10 is the pick here. I just think the Raiders just kind of done. The Chiefs are rounding into form, kind of getting better every game. So I'll take Chiefs. They're right in that race for the number one seed. They got a lot to play for. I think they come out, both sides of the ball look really good. I still like the under 48, though. I think Chiefs offense is getting there, but still not all the way back to what there used to be. Raiders defense is okay. It's not great, but it kind of plays tough, especially I think against the Chiefs. They'll kind of hang around a little bit, but I think ultimately Chiefs will pull away. So I like Chiefs minus 10 and the under 48 here. Next up, we got the Falcons plus 2.5 at Carolina. Two kind of they're not part of the worst team category, but they're kind of that next step up of like mediocre to bad teams. And Atlanta seems to play well against the bad teams, and it's where they struggle when they play teams like Tampa Bay and such. But the Cowboys, I like the Falcons here. Take plus 2.5, but I like them probably to win the game as well. Carolina, I don't know, coming off a bye, I think. They are what they are. It was a good story, the whole Cam Newton thing, but they're just not the same offensively without McCaffrey. He's obviously still out. I'm surprised it's minus 2.5, honestly, for Carolina, but it could just be because Carolina's defense is still pretty good. Atlanta just kind of is right? It's two very bland teams. It's going to be an ugly game, although I do like over 42. I think the Falcons show me a little bit offensively last week. I know they only scored 17 points, but they were, kind of like one last pass away from getting the over in that game to get to like 24 points against the Bucks. I think they can squeak enough offense out, maybe the mid to low 20s. And then Carolina, I don't know. They may not score enough to get their end of the bargain, but I just have a slight gut feeling on the over here on a low total of 42. So take Falcons and the over, although I don't love that over. Next up, we got Jacksonville plus 8.5 at the Tennessee Titans. Jacksonville kind of right in that basement, along with Houston. They stink. I mean, what else can you say? Tennessee, obviously struggling a little bit offensively without Derrick Henry. They tried AP, didn't work out. He's now in Seattle. It's probably not going to work out there either for him, but I don't know. I just think Jacksonville's that bad. I don't really like Tennessee much the last few weeks, but I think they can cover 8.5. Jacksonville is just that bad. And I like the under 43.5. This just screams like a 20-10, 24-13 maybe kind of game for the Titans. They'll still obviously try to run the ball even without Henry. It's just their formula on offense. They're not a let Tannehill drop back and throw 50 passes kind of team. So I think the game will kind of drag out, longer drives. Jacksonville's going to try to get Robinson back involved after he was complaining about his role in the offense and Lawrence, this and that. And I think it'll be low scoring, kind of grungy game, but Tennessee will ultimately cover, I think, and it'll go under 43.5. Moving on, another kind of ho-hum game. The Saints are -5.5 at the New York Jets. Saints, obviously fell off pretty hard once Jameis went out, but really even more shockingly is their defense has kind of fallen off as well. So they're not very good, and the Jets aren't very good, but the Jets kind of obviously showed some fight last week. So, I think the Jets can cover. Maybe win, maybe not win. I don't know, but I just think 5.5. These two teams are a little closer than, closer in skill and whatnot since, than we would have expected earlier in the year. So I like the Jets to cover 5.5. And I just think this will be kind of a low-scoring, ugly game as well. So I'm going to go under 43. I don't love it because the Jets' defense is pretty awful, one of the worst. I just think the Saints offensively struggle that much. Kamara, I think, is back, though, so that does worry me a little bit about the under. You know what? I'm gonna do it first. I haven't done this, I don't think, as I've wanted to, but I haven't done this in any of my videos where I've switched my pick like as I'm reading them out. But I'm gonna switch. I'm gonna go over 43 in Jets Saints. I think Kamara's back. I read earlier. I just remembered it now. Saints offense still not very good, but the Jets can kind of do some things offensively, and I just think, Jets defense isn't very good. Saints defense isn't as good as it was. I like over 43. Why not? Next up, we got Detroit +10 at Denver. Kind of surprising, Denver -10 after they look like shit against the Chiefs. So kind of surprised by that number. Lions coming off a win. They're still not a good team, obviously, but surprised just based off of last week's performances that this line is as high as it is. I like the Lions to keep it within 10. Just the Broncos are going to be a good quarterback away from being a solid team, but he just holds them back. He doesn't look sure of himself in the pocket. The ball comes out weird. He's always sidearming and this and that when he doesn't need to. I don't know. I like the Lions +10 pretty comfortably. And then under 42 as well, I like here. Both defenses are pretty solid, honestly. Detroit's defense isn't bad. I just think this game is going to be low scoring. Could see maybe Denver pulling it out like 20-17. So I like the Lions and the under 42. Next up, we got the Giants +10 at the LA Chargers. I think Daniel Jones is questionable for the game right now. If he can't go still, it'll be Jake Fromm. But Chargers got a lot of guys out with COVID in that right now. I think Keenan Allen's out, Williams. And they got a lot of guys on COVID protocol right now. The Chargers just had a nice win, an impressive win over the Bengals, but the Bengals really shot themselves in the foot all game long. Fumbles, this and that. They were defensive miscues. That game could have been a lot closer, but like I said, the Bengals just Burrow threw one really bad interception. Obviously got hurt as well and hurt his finger. It didn't help matters, so I'm not really going to put a ton of stock into that Chargers win. I still am disappointed by them after kind of hyping them up earlier this year. I think the Giants can keep it within 10. I really do. Yeah, and Chargers defense, like I said, Chargers defense isn't that good. Bengals still scored 22 points with, fumbles and bad pick and Burrow's finger getting injured. So yeah, Chargers defense still not good. I think Giants can do enough, keep it close enough, and I like the over 43. Um, I think Giants will run the ball probably pretty well against the Chargers. That's most teams do. Um, yeah, and they'll keep it close and keep it to go, I think, over 43. I could see maybe Chargers winning 26-23 or something in this game. So, yeah, I'll take Giants and the over. Giants with the points, obviously. Next up, we got Buffalo plus 3.5 at Tampa Bay. Everyone saw the Monday night game where Buffalo just got ran all over. Patriots didn't want to do anything but run, run, run. Probably, the Bills didn't want to admit it in their post game. They got upset when someone asked if it was embarrassing. You got run all over. They didn't want to admit it, but I'm sure it was because it's happened, multiple times this year to them. I know their overall defensive numbers don't look too bad, but that's aided by the fact that or at least their run defense doesn't look that bad, like stat-wise overall through the course of the season, because they have a couple blowout wins on their resume too, where teams obviously aren't going to run the ball. So, yeah, they're in trouble. Honestly, they didn't look good. They didn't pass, my eye test when I watched them both sides of the ball. I think Tampa Bay can cover this pretty easily, minus 3.5. Again, they're fighting for that 1 seed. Got to keep pace with Green Bay, Arizona, and this and that. It'll be tough, but there's still a chance for them to get up in that, the 1 seed potential. I like the Bucks minus 3.5, and yeah, I think the Bucks will do kind of the same thing. They'll run the ball a lot. Leonard Fournette, Rojo, they'll control the clock. I'm sure Buffalo can't really run. I think the Bucks are going to make Josh Allen throw it a bunch. We'll see what happens, but yeah, I like the Bucks and like the under 53.5. I just think it's a little too high considering the Bills off as well as their defense. The Bills offense has looked out of sorts too. When they had the wind in their favor, they didn't really do much with it. So I don't see how they put forth enough points on their own to get this point total over. So I'll take the under 53.5. The Bucks, knowing the strengths and weaknesses of their opposition, they're going to run the ball a lot. Brady is very good at milking the clock. He'll probably have a couple long 8, 9, 10-minute drives, dink and dunk, run the ball, this and that. So I don't think there's going to be enough time to get over 53.5. So give me the Bucks and the under. Next up, we got the 49ers minus 1.5 at Cincinnati. Burrow should be good to go, but he's a little still obviously banged up with his finger. And yeah, Bengals, it's hard to know what to make about the Bengals because they've had some impressive games and they've had, lost to the Jets, lost last week where they just beat themselves more than anything. And as much as I hate to admit it, the Niners were playing well. I had written them off. Going back to that Monday night, before that Monday night game against the Rams, I thought they would lose badly in that one. The reverse happened, and they've looked good ever since. I don't think they've lost a game since then. So, yeah, I like the Niners. Keep it rolling. Bengals defense kind of not looking as good as I thought. Niners are a run-based, another time of possession, clock-eating type of team. I think they will be able to do that against the Bengals. Keep Joe Burrow off the field, and when he's on the field, it's hard to say how effective he'll be. I think Mixon also is questionable. If he does play, he's a little banged up as well. That's a big deal. That's a big part of their offense. Yeah, I just think the Niners can cover minus 1.5, kind of control the game, both sides of the ball. And then I like under 48.5. I think Niners will do mostly what they want offensively, but it'll be in longer drives, this and that. And the Bengals, I just worry about Burrow's finger and I worry about Mixon's health and if that'll really allow them to put up enough points. So I'll take the Niners and the under 48.5. Next up, the Sunday nighter, Bears plus 12.5 at Green Bay. Yeah, tough one to call. I mean, there's every reason to believe that Aaron Rodgers is gonna just do what he does and punk the Bears once again, blow them out, this and that. But I think it's just a lot of points. I think I said the same thing last time they played, and I think the Packers covered that one. But Fields is back after missing a couple weeks. I think he'll be hungry. I think he'll make just a couple plays. They seem to have a good deep ball connection with Mooney. He uses the tight ends pretty well. I think they'll just barely keep this within the number, 12.5. Green Bay, Packers don't really blow teams out all that often anyways. Like, they don't really, it doesn't seem like something that Aaron Rodgers, against the Bears, maybe he cares, but just in general, they don't mind kind of dragging the game out, keeping it closer, no matter who they're playing against. Yeah, I like the Bears to squeak by that plus 12.5, so I'll take the Bears, but I could very well be wrong and they get killed again for all I know. And like over 43, I just think the Bears, if they're gonna score, it's gonna be off big plays. The Packers secondary is a little suspect at times, outside of Alexander, that rookie they got. He's looked good at times, but he's gotten burned at times too. I forget his name, the guy, I think he came from Georgia. It's mistaken me, but yeah, anyways, outside of J.R. Alexander, there's some leaky parts in their secondary. So if the Bears do cover, it's because they're going to maybe hit a couple deep passes, maybe break a run or two with Montgomery. So yeah, I like Bears in the over 43. And then I think, with that being said too, I think Packers alone, you can easily pen in for 24, 27 points. So yeah, give me the Bears to cover, even if barely, and the over 43, barely. Lastly, the Monday nighter, good one here. We got the Rams plus 2.5 at Arizona. Rematch from, what was that at the time? A pretty big shock. The Rams, I think, were undefeated at this time. Cardinals beat them pretty bad. Rams haven't looked good, but they had the perfect get-right spot against Jacksonville. Get their confidence back up a little bit. Blew them out of the water. Covered that game easily, obviously. I think they keep it rolling here. I really do. At least offensively. Maybe they've kind of found a spot for Odell. If he can be comfortable being that, second to third receiver. Obviously, Cooper Kupp's the 1A and probably the 1B. Jefferson, when he's not dropping the ball, is a threat as well. And he can kind of still run the ball a little bit. I don't know, Arizona, they've looked good lately, but, I think, is there going to be maybe questions? Is Murray 100%? Will he still, I don't know if he's as big of a threat to run post-injury right now, so that takes maybe some wind out of the sails a little bit. But yeah, I like the Rams in a shootout, though, still. I think the Rams defense, obviously you got Jalen Ramsey, Aaron Donald, as good as it gets, but overall as a unit, they haven't looked great at times. I like the Rams to kind of win in the shootout. Both teams got a lot of weapons. Hopkins is back, obviously, for Arizona. He'll be a factor, I'm sure. They'll probably have him against Ramsey, but they'll maybe move him in the slot here and there and try to get him away from that one-on-one coverage. But if they don't, then you still got Kirk, you still got James Conner, good at catching out of the backfield and running. So yeah, I like the over 51.5. With that being said, a lot of weapons, a lot of fireworks, Monday night game. I just think it's going to be a shootout, and I like the Rams to pull through. Plus 2.5 at least, probably to win the game outright, but I just think in this kind of game, these two teams, I could just see the Rams obviously still sour about that initial loss they had, 37-20 it was against the Cardinals. I think this is a good spot for them, coming off a win against Jacksonville, of all teams, but just a good bounce back spot to keep it rolling. And say that they had a perfect get right game last week, and I think they're going to build off that, and I think they probably win this game. So yeah, that's my week 14 picks. hoping for a good bounce back after a kind of week last week. Yeah, back home, back to grinding out these matchups, and I feel good about them. So there we are.